and we've got to sandwich it with positivity.
Sandwich.
We got to. I mean, that's just what people are more willing to hear it. When you sandwich it with something positive and not just the negative.
Right.
So
that is so powerful. We gotta be intentional about noticing when we see them doing something well.
Yes.
When they make the good grades. When we see them up there singing in the choir on the praise team. Go talk to them. Go build that relationship. Pour into them and point out what they're doing positive.
that's right.
Welcome to Girls Night In, where real women with real faith talk about real life. I am so excited about what we're here to talk to you about tonight. We got a hot topic tonight. We're talking about something that we're all affected by, whether we're having to have a difficult conversation or whether we're on the receiving end. This is a topic that we all deal with, which is, can women have healthy confrontation? So I got my girls with me tonight to help us break it down and talk about all the things. So I'm going to start over here to my right. I got my girl, Yen Andrews. She lives here in Huntsville, Alabama. She is a mom of 3. She's a wife, and she's the administrator of a health practice here in Huntsville. Thank you for joining us, Yen. All right, and next we have Maya Dupree. She's a 22-year-old college student. She is studying early childhood education. She's actually been the babysitter for my kids. So she's amazing at what she does. Good training ground. And so I'm so happy you're joining us on this conversation. On my left, we've got Taina Nixon. She lives here in Huntsville, Alabama. She's from Atlanta, Georgia. She's a women's health coach. She's also a, remind me again.
Health educator.
There we go. Health educator for women. And she is an amazing woman. She's a wife. She's a mom of a 5-year-old. And she is here to help us break this thing down. Glad you're here. And last but not least, we have Jessica Dudley. She's a broker here in Huntsville, Alabama. She's a mom of 3. She's a wife. Another amazing woman. I'm so glad you're here to help us break this thing down.
Super excited to be here.
Yay. So we're going to talk about confrontation. I know we've all had to deal with it. I know we've all had to receive it. And so we're going to talk about it just from a very real, practical point of view, because I believe that sometimes the enemy will try to use different breakdowns in our relationships with women to create these walls and barriers. I read this study that said that women who have strong female relationships actually live longer and are healthier. And so it's important that we find ways to keep our relationships healthy and make sure that we're able to pour into each other on this topic. So I want to start off by asking a question. What does healthy confrontation actually look like? Like, throw out some words for me of what healthy confrontation looks like, sounds like. What does it feel like?
Honest.
I like that. Yeah.
Graceful.
Yes. Giving grace. Speaking with grace.
Respectful.
I like that. Yes, yes.
Compassionate.
Okay. So have all of your confrontations always look like that?
Maybe not all.
Not all.
Why do you think some women struggle with confrontation? Because the way you all just described it, it sounds like something we would welcome and be open to do. But why do you think some of us struggle to either receive it or to initiate it?
I think the hardest part for me sometimes about confrontation is how the other person might receive what I want to say. Because sometimes no matter how gracious you are, no matter how compassionate you are, it's hard to hear difficult things about yourself.
Absolutely.
And so that's always my concern, is that this person might not like what I'm about to say, and then I, in turn, have to deal with their reaction.
Okay.
I think for me, it's like being a non-confrontational person.
Me too, girl.
Right. I'm always like worried how they might take it, and then later on see like how they receive me later on in life. And I think that's worriedness and that, you know, anxiety feeling of how are they going to receive what I'm saying to them? Are they taking it as I'm rude, or are they just actually taking what I'm saying and like are they putting it to heart? Or are they, you know, actually receiving it from what I'm, you know, actually trying to say?
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't come out that way.
Yeah. No, I believe you. That is such a major thing. I think we're always, you know, we tend to err on the side of keeping peace and, you know, wanting to maintain the relationship. And, you know, sometimes that'll keep us from really sharing what's on our heart. You know. Anybody else have any reasons why you think women may struggle with confrontation?
Yeah.
Is it personal? I mean, personality
thing,
cultural, you know?
Yeah, I think there's so many different factors that reside on both sides. So the one that's receiving the information and the one that's giving the information, right? So I think your upbringing has a lot to do with it. I think what's been modeled for you, if you've seen healthy confrontation in a home, if you've been raised being criticized a lot in your home, I think you will sort of be real hesitant to receive healthy confrontation, even from somebody who's really close to you, just because those emotions will start rising, right? And then I also think if it's not coming from someone you trust or someone who you believe really has the best interest, that could be a barrier.
Absolutely.
I can run away from that. Yeah,
That's so
Absolutely.
good. That's so true. I love that you brought up our upbringing and all of that. And it's something that we have to just kind of take into heart and realize there's so many different factors that can affect it.
right.
Yeah.
Is healthy, loving confrontation between women possible? And have any of you experienced it?
Yes. Absolutely. Loving confrontation. Absolutely. I would say I've definitely experienced it. And there's definitely a difference between someone saying something to you with compassion, with grace, and with love.
Absolutely.
And then there's a difference between them coming at you like to attack you or to criticize you or to attack your character. And I think discernment is very key in those kind of conversations. And also, I think Yen kind of hit on it a little bit. Relationship is really important because honestly, if there's no foundation, if there's no relationship, then I can't really receive what you're saying. And I think that's just a kind of across the board.
Absolutely.
So there have been several times where I've had to have conversations or conversations have been had with me. And I can remember a time where a girlfriend had a conversation with me about forgiveness. And at the time, admittedly, I'll let you know right now, I was not about that forgiveness life, okay? And I was like, and anybody that had anything to do with it don't need to be forgiving that person either.
Right. None of us are going to forgive.
Okay,
right.
We all together
We
in this thing.
collective.
Correct. However, this sweet sister, you know, she was really compassionate and kind. And she said to me, she said, Jessica, maybe today is not the day. However, at some point, you're going to have to let this go and you're going to have to forgive this person, especially because And I don't even remember if she said this specifically, but what I know from just reading the word that, you know, if I can't forgive my brother or sister here, then God can't forgive me.
Yeah.
And when I really thought about that thing, as angry as I was, as hurt as I was, as traumatic as the situation may have been, I had to sit with that thing in my quiet time with God and deal with it. And initially I was like, okay, me and that girlfriend done, because she clearly don't get that we supposed to be together in this thing. Right. Why are we trying to forgive people that's not out here doing what they're supposed to do?
Right.
But legit, like God, I feel like that conversation with that girlfriend was kind of like God breathing his breath of fresh air, of new life over me, so that as I go into that prayer closet, every time he was kind of softening my heart and making me more open to the idea of forgiving, you know, the person who had offended me. So for sure, it definitely can be done. And my girlfriend, the way she came to me, it wasn't in a attack type of way. It was definitely compassionate and kind and graceful, but I think just on GP, the
direct.
fact, like for real, the situation that I needed to forgive in was just so hurtful. It needed to take time. So she didn't come at me wrong. It's just, I just wasn't ready at that time to receive. But eventually I did.
Yeah.
And that girlfriend is still a dear friend to this day. So I appreciate her taking the time to do that for me and speaking that hard thing. Like, that was a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
But when you have relationship, you can have those hard conversations because you know the heart of the person. You know that it's not intentional. So yeah.
Relationship is key.
Yes.
Oh man, that lays the foundation for having those hard conversations, because y'all mentioned trust and the relationship.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sometimes where we get it wrong, where there are certain people that feel like they just need to step to everybody and they haven't built that relationship. They haven't built that rapport with the person. And so, of course, it's not received.
Right.
Exactly.
But when you have that relationship, when you've invested time, when they know that you care, it makes a difference. So that's such a good
Absolutely.
foundation for us to remember.
Absolutely.
Tanya, did you have one?
Yeah. Growing up, I am someone who was like kind of a nerd a little bit and a little bit of a know-it-all. I can admit that now, looking back. And that is generally not received well by your peers, especially as children. But I felt like I know the right thing, so y'all should listen to me, right? Yeah. And so when you're someone like that, you're going to end up dealing with some confrontation, right? And it took a while over time. You know, in elementary school, it ended up in, well, she said, and you know, whatever. As I got a little bit older, I think the Lord started to refine my character and my ability to talk to people and relate to other people, to see other people's point of view, that I don't always have to be the one, you know, that's right. And that helped. And I think it all came to a head when we talk about healthy confrontation in college. I had some young ladies, we were all part of a friend group. And I think there was a misunderstanding about a guy. And so there was a conversation had behind my back. And then another person outside of our friend group heard that conversation, participated by her own admission in that conversation. And then she came and told me about it. She's like, I feel bad because we're all supposed to be cool, but this is what was said. And I was like, and what did you say? Because I'm like, if you were there, what was said? Let's be honest. But to her credit, she told me, she's like, I did say these things. I said, I appreciate you so much. I am not upset, but I'm going to have a conversation with my girls. And so I just asked, hey, we were in the dorms, Wade Hall. I still remember it. I was like, can y'all meet me on the 3rd floor in the little break room area? I want to talk. And we got there and I was like, before we start, I would like to pray. And I really feel, I'm telling you, it wasn't me, right? Like that was the Holy Spirit, I think, guiding the whole thing. But it's just that I had a willingness to resolve it. And the Lord gave me the tools because I did not know them at the time. And I asked them, could we pray? And that set the tone for the whole thing. We talked for like 2 hours.
Wow.
Tears were shed. And it wasn't that anybody was like on eggshells. We were all being very upfront with each other, and very vulnerable with each other to say, I liked him, you know, multiple people liked him and they felt a way when you got with him. And that is a difficult thing to navigate, you know, it like girl code versus, you know what I mean? All of those things.
Yeah.
And so, it was a difficult, but like cleansing conversation. Do you know that some 10, 15 years later, those women came to my wedding. Like, we're still friends to this day. I send them holiday cards, you know, of my family. And I think it's because we were able to have that conversation. Wrongs were admitted. Everyone asked for forgiveness where it needed to, and everyone gave forgiveness where it needed to be given. And that was my first, really healthy, spirit-led confrontation.
That's good.
You said something that you had a willingness to resolve. And that stuck out because sometimes I feel like when we confront, it's not to resolve.
Correct.
I'm going to go call her out.
That's right.
I'm going to go tell her about herself.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Where you were saying, no, my intent is different here.
Yeah.
I want peace.
Yep.
I want to resolve this
Yeah.
and let's get to the bottom of it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you led with prayer. You led with laying it all out there. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that to hear that that's possible
It's
and
possible.
doable,
Yes.
and especially at such a young age.
Yeah.
And that's how I know with the Holy Spirit. Because where did that maturity come from?
Right.
That was not me.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I love that.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, you know, going back to your situation, there was one of the friends came back and told you. And so what do y'all think about that situation in general when you hear that something went down, whether you hear that this person was hurt by something you did or whether they're coming back to say, this is what happened? Do you feel like, how do you gauge whether you need to kind of go that next step and say, okay, this person was hurt by me. How do I know if I need to go and confront them because they have not come to me with that,
Right.
but I'm hearing it secondhand? Like, how do you all, I'm just kind of throwing it the opposite way, but a lot of times we've all been heard, you know, heard that, oh, so-and-so, you know, is in her feelings or so-and-so was hurt, you know, and a lot of times we're wondering, well,
Why didn't you say that?
right. But sometimes, again, the non-confrontational personality.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of us over here, are y'all confront? Are you all
confrontational?
You're a little confrontational.
I'm in the middle.
I'm
in the middle.
Okay. So, like, you know, we may be those ones that say, you know, I don't want to say anything, but I'm feeling, you know, and you're trying to work through it, you know. How do you handle that? How do you know when and how and if you should go and talk to the person?
I've had a situation where, mind you, I was in a group of friends and it wasn't me who did anything, but I was with them. So it was kind of like
Guilty by association type of thing?
And so I just honestly got guidance from an older peer. And I was like, I know that if it was me in that situation, that I would want somebody to come to me and say, I am deeply sorry, even though it was not me, just to know that somebody was on my side and understood that I was deeply hurt. I have that person, and I wanted to be that person that one person did not have.
Right.
And we were able to talk it out, and I was able to apologize and just, you know, hey, I know that you were really hurt and you didn't show it, but I just want to have this, you know, sit. If you need help, if you need to talk, I am deeply sorry. And we just went from there. We're friends, but yeah, it was more of just a understanding. It's like, if it was me in that situation,
I love
how
that.
would I want somebody to come to me?
Yeah, I love that.
I hope I can grow up to be like you. I haven't made it there. I have an older friend that said, believe it or not, people around you will always have issues with you and you'll never know.
Wow.
Right? So basically you're not going to be perfect for everybody.
That's
You'll
right.
offend people when you didn't mean to. So you could chase you could be just chasing, going in circles, trying to sort of resolve things. For me, the Holy Spirit will nudge me pretty hard if it's something that I need to do, which I've had to do. But otherwise, it's usually if I'm emotionally invested in the person that I won't hesitate. Like, what's going on? Has something happened? Have I offended you? Whatnot? The more difficult situations are people that paths don't really cross, but they kind of don't make eye contact with you. Like, you used to say hi and now you don't say hi.
Right.
I haven't grown up yet. I'm just like, just hopefully you'll find it in your heart to go and we can kind of squash it, or it could be a bad day, or you're having a bad season. Like I don't internalize things right away. But I want to be like you. But
I'm kind of like that too, Yen, in that it, depending on the proximity to me, I will make that, because I say I'm a little confrontational and a little bit in the middle, because it gives me that like gut churning feeling, of like anxiety and like, here we go. I don't know what she's gonna say. I don't know. You know what I mean? But if I'm invested in the relationship, then it's worth putting myself through that to have the difficult conversation, or to address how I know that person might be feeling. And just something that I found when I'm not as invested in the relationship is to actually just continue to be as kind as ever. Like I'm just going to treat them the exact same way. Because as far as I'm concerned, nothing has happened. I didn't know that I did anything, right? And I don't know that they're upset with me. I'm just going to continue to be kind to them. And hopefully that opens the door for them to eventually come and say something. And if not, then peace be with you.
Shake the dust off. I love that. That's so good. You said something where you said just heap kindness on them. And that's biblical.
That is.
And so I think it makes a difference, because as you said, sometimes it was a bad day. Sometimes you just had no clue. And hopefully they will look at the trend. And not just single out that one moment, you know, because I feel like that's something that can happen. She didn't talk to me. And it's like, a lot of times when we're slighted, it has nothing to do with us.
Correct.
And everything to do with what that person is carrying and what they're going through and what's going on with them. And so, but a lot of times we will internalize that. But it's so important, as the word that's been thrown out is grace. Is to be gracious and just take a step back and say, you know what, this is not generally how they are. And if there's something that's that deep, where my stomach is just churning every time I see them, let's sit down and have a conversation. And let's have that prayer. Do you all believe that there's a time-sensitive nature to a healthy confrontation? Like, say, for instance, you feel slighted. Is there a time-sensitive nature to say, all right, let me kind of be prayerfully assertive and trying to bring this up instead of like 3, 4, 5 years later? Is that a key to it being a healthy confrontation, or does it depend?
I think so. I think there is a healthy time limit that you should address things, especially kind of going back to the relationship thing. If we're in relationship and I have to see you all the time or on a regular basis, then we definitely need to have that conversation earlier than later. Because I feel like the longer you put it off, especially depending on the relationship, it could, all kind of stories can be made up and assumptions can be made, and it just deepens the wound, and you don't even know, it may not even be that serious, but you make up all these stories in your mind, and that may not even be what happened.
Come on.
So I do think that there is a time sensitivity to sometimes with different offenses, and then there's some things that, like we were talking about earlier with one of the situations that I was in, it was very traumatic, and I needed time to process and to really, if I'm completely honest, I needed to forgive myself. Like as a mom, as a parent, I felt like, I had done something wrong, right? And so there was a lot going through my head.
There was layers to it.
Yeah, there was layers, exactly. And so so I think based on, the situation, the proximity of the relationship, the type of relationship, there definitely needs to be some time sensitivity involved with the forgiveness piece and addressing and confronting it healthily.
there's this thing with that internal conversation. I know we all role play, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're in the shower just and then
rolling.
that
And
and I feel like the longer when it exceeds that amount of time that you're speaking about, Jess, right? When you need that time to pray, to cool off, to work through the different layers of emotion. When it extends beyond that time is that internal conversation that's not of God. Because you're actually putting your mind set in the situation in a place that's not being handled by the Lord.
Right.
I know I've done it. And if I find myself in the shower going, and then I'm role playing. Like, you're not doing that.
Right.
Right? That means the time has exceeded. That means that you need to go ahead and sort of address it. But it's dangerous because it doesn't help to heal. It doesn't. It just adds more fuel.
Absolutely.
That's all it does. So I always, that internal conversation is
I
bad.
think too, when we do that, if you do eventually go and have the conversation, the person knows how long you've been ruminating on this. And that's happened to me. I didn't mean to confront them, but we were having a different conversation and it came out because I held it in my heart, what they had done to me. And then they were like, why didn't you ever say anything? We're so close. Why would you keep that from me? So then it became two hurts now. It's what they did to me, but also that I never addressed it with them. So then they feel a little bit betrayed. Like, I thought we were closer than that. And it broke the trust a little bit and it had to be repaired. It can be, but it's difficult.
Takes work.
Wow. Ooh, y'all this is so good and so necessary.
So necessary.
Because I think a lot of times we're holding back thinking that we're helping.
Exactly.
Thinking that this Band-Aid is going to cover all this blood and all this wound that's deep. And it's actually hurting. And so it's so important that we take the Bible's counsel to not let the sun go down on our anger. And again, the sun going down can be whatever time that God has put on that. Because some things can't be resolved in one day, like I said. But whenever God gives that nudge and you're finding yourself going, because I heard someone say, we'll spiral. We will spiral.
Yes, we will.
You know, we'll make up different narratives or we'll have all different things going on. And so it's so important to get the facts, get the truth, and have that honest, loving conversation. Even though it hurts, it'll heal.
Yes.
Here recently, I broke a toe. That thing hurt, y'all. It was such a little tiny bone. And I kept trying to hobble around on it. I did not want anyone to touch that thing. And I took 2 weeks before I went to the doctor, but I'm just like, you know, and my husband's like, babe, go, ma'am, please go. And so I went up there, but even just the fact that they were about to touch it just made me cringe because I did not want anyone to touch it. But that was my step to healing. Like the doctor, they literally just brushed their fingers across and they were like, does it hurt? When I was like, yes. And they were like, that's how we know it's broken. But they couldn't diagnose and they couldn't begin the process of healing until they touched what hurt.
That's right.
And so sometimes we're trying to protect so much our little hearts, our pride, our, you know, we don't want to put ourselves out there. But it's important that we do hard things as women, that we have difficult conversations because I believe that healing can come across when we do the hard things.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about why do you think women are sometimes comfortable and I don't even want to say comfortable. Why do you think sometimes that we will share the offense that has happened to us with you, and you? And we are so hesitant to go directly to the person, but everybody knows.
Right.
Everybody knows.
Right.
And we bring them all with us.
Yeah.
Because don't talk to her. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We in this together.
Correct.
But in general, why do you think that is? Are we trying to like, you know, find out if we're tripping, you know, am I crazy?
That's what we always say.
Right.
Okay, because I was just checking.
Right.
I was just making sure I wasn't.
I'm just trying to see. You know,
Right.
What is that?
I think there's a genuine place for that, though.
Yes.
You know, sometimes you have to check your emotions.
Yes.
Right.
Don't always trust how you're responding.
Absolutely.
So I think there is a time and place. But then I think other times it's just gossip. I think
Yeah,
we're
we're being
just
messy.
like, I'm being messy. I need more people on my team than
Yeah.
that person has on their team.
That's right.
So, we rolling. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because
And
sometimes it's like a prayer request.
Yes, it comes in all forms.
Sometimes
It does come in all forms.
gossip. Sometimes, we'll reframe that thing to justify
No, it's true.
why are we sharing this thing.
Come on, somebody.
No, well, I was gonna say, I also think it matters who you're talking to about it.
Yes.
Right? Like I have different kinds of friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my best friends from childhood, I could tell her that I ran someone over in my car, and she's gonna be like, "But why were they standing in front of your car?" And I'm like, "Exactly,
You got my back.
exactly, right? Like she will always have my back, no matter what, right?
That's right.
That is not really the friend to be like, "Am I tripping?"
Right.
Because as far as she's concerned, I'm never tripping.
Correct.
But
Yeah,
a
that's
more
good.
sort of
That's good.
objective friend who isn't worried about making me upset.
Yeah.
Will be like, actually, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. You're tripping a
You're
little
tripping.
bit. And this is what you might do, and kind of help you process it.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's a time for that, to get an outside perspective outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And process it a little bit before
Absolutely.
approaching the person.
Yeah.
And I thought about something else. I think another reason why sometimes we'll talk about it with other people and not the actual person is because it's easy to villainize the other person when they're not sharing their piece.
Yeah.
Right? When they aren't a flesh and blood person in front of you saying, "But you hurt me too."
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no other side of the story to have to
Yeah,
take
yeah.
into account. So it's
Right.
just easier to tell it to an audience
Yeah.
than to face the actual feelings, flesh and blood of the person
Right.
themselves.
That's true.
That's some wisdom. And I think that's something we all need to internalize and remember, is knowing who to go to. Because we all got that friend, and my friends know who they are. Like, I came to you because I know you're going to tell me the truth.
That's right.
And you're going to tell me if I'm tripping.
That's
You're
right.
going to tell me to fall back, And then, we got those friends that's like down the ride. Where we doing?
Where we
we
going?
going? Pop the trunk. Let's go.
Exactly.
So it's important to know that.
I love this conversation where women are sitting down and talking about healthy confrontation. I hope that you're enjoying it too. And thank you so much for joining us on the Weekend Exhale with BOL. Listen, we have something special coming up just for you. November 7th through the 9th, we are having our annual Vision and Dreamers Conference right here in the beautiful city of Huntsville, Alabama. There will be speakers there like Pastor Gianna Snell, Eric Thomas, Tabitha Brown, and John Maxwell. And we want you right now to go register at breathoflife.tv. This conference is for visionaries and for dreamers that are looking to make those things a reality, and we don't want you to miss out. But in the meantime, let's get back to this conversation with Girls Night In.
One other thing I want to pivot just a little bit, as talking about older women and younger women.
This is good.
A few months ago, there was a situation where there was a young lady reposting a flyer that had to do with a party. And one of the images on the flyer was very offensive to the King family, Martin Luther King. So there was an image of him basically in his demise moment, but they were using this image to promote the party or the event. And so, this thing was circulating around, and Bernice King, the daughter of Dr. King, wrote the woman publicly and just said, my dad fought for all of our freedoms, and what you're doing is very hurtful to our family. Would you please take this down? And the young woman publicly responded and said, I had no idea. I was just passing along something. I thought it was innocent, but I will take this down. I am so sorry. And what I loved about seeing that exchange was seeing people responding to a loving correction and a loving reception.
Yes.
Where this older woman said, listen, I'm not trying to come for you,
Right.
but let me just educate you, on what this means. This is deeper. This is not just a picture. Like, this goes deeper, and this is deeply hurtful. And the way the young woman received it was really powerful. And there were just comment after comment of people like, this is how it should be done.
Yeah.
And we know in Titus 2:3-5, it speaks about older women teaching younger women. What does that actually look like in today's culture? Do you feel like it's still okay? Because I think we are now in a generation where people are a little afraid not only to confront sisters, but to confront other people's young children, because there's just some different
They're different.
and with reason
Yes.
in some instances,
Yeah.
you know, because sometimes people come wrong.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So, but the Bible, you know, gives us this counsel. So how do we bring that into 2025?
I think at least with my generation, there's been so many times where the correction or the talk wouldn't be very respectful in a sense. And so if that's happening over and over again, when somebody who's actually trying to give you information that you need to know, it just goes through one ear and out the other because they've been talked to this way or that way. I think it all comes together when you're talking respectfully.
Yeah.
I think that has a big part in getting your message across, because without that respect, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of young people, at least that I know, is, oh, so-and-so was talking to me this way and just thinks that I'm gonna take that and da-da-da-da-da. Not understanding that actually that person had a lot of right things that they were saying.
Right.
But the way that they gave their message, it made that person just shut off and say, you know what, I don't really care what that person has to say because the way that they came at me, da-da-da-da-da, and I'm done with that person. Not knowing like, they were right.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from because it was in a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
And just because you're young doesn't mean that you don't deserve respect.
Right.
You know? So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that relationship and the delivery.
Yes.
Making sure that we're communicating that we care about you.
Yes.
And not just noticing this little thing that I'm going to point out.
Yes.
And I would say, if I'm considering myself to be the older, also taking the time to understand the younger generation.
Yes.
Right? And things have changed. And they find things not to be as important as maybe we did. And then you have to sort of weigh it. Like, is this something that really requires my input? Right? And then making sure it's with compassion and making sure it's not in passing, you know, pulling them to the side and scolding them on how they're dressed.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, there's something more that you want to share with them. So just sort of slowing down, having that relationship, and then figure it out. Like, is this really something that needs to be addressed?
Yeah.
And then have you taken the time to study them?
Right.
Yeah. That's good.
That time investment is important.
Yeah.
So, Maya, do you think that young women still value wisdom and correction from the older generation?
I think it comes to a point where it's like, it's a yes, but it's also sometimes a no, because you have to take into fact that times are changing, and something that you believe that is wrong in their eyes is not, you know? And a lot of the time, there's so many things that were considered wrong, or that's not, why are you doing things this way and that honestly, if you look at the bigger picture, you'll see, oh, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and just kind of look from their point of view and see, okay, I can see where you're coming from, and just have that honest conversation instead of just kind of like piling it on.
Yeah.
I think that like those conversations need to be there beforehand for that information to actually come across in a way that will stick with the younger generation.
Right. That's
good. We definitely have to just be conscious and aware. I think we've all experienced when we were younger, and you know, people who meant well.
Yes.
But it did not come across the way it needed to come across.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes you, like you said, throw out the whole message.
Yeah.
When what was right, but then
Right.
we're just kind of burned by how it was delivered.
Yeah.
And so we definitely have to be careful. But I do still think that the word is good to us by saying that we need to, when we see something, say something
Yes.
in a loving way.
Yeah.
Because too many times we see young people going down this path, right? And then when things really go off the rails, you'll hear, oh, I saw it. Yeah, I saw this and I saw that, but we didn't say anything.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the barriers that are keeping older people from saying something?
Well,
Because they love them, they care for them, they see them,
But they don't.
they don't say anything.
I think there's like more of a gap between generations now. I feel like growing up, women were in more spaces together intergenerationally. And so then you naturally had more of a chance to have relationships with people who were older than you. But now we're more like siloed into our generational or peer groups. So then
so
if
true.
the person, they can still see you, but they might not be in relationship with you. So then they don't feel like it's their place to say something.
Yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
worry that someone will snap at them, whether it's the parent or the young person themselves will snap at them. So it's kind of a vulnerable thing to do to just approach them. So that's why I always say maybe don't do the cold approach, you know?
Absolutely.
You see that young person going down a certain way, try to build relationship with that
Yes.
child
Yeah.
as opposed to
Yes.
saying, I saw you in that corner with that boy.
Yeah.
You know? Right? So
Right.
then it's like maybe build a mentor-mentee relationship or
Yes.
something like that. So
Yeah.
then your word holds more weight
Yeah.
when you say it. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's so true. I think also Maya mentioned it a little bit earlier. She said, think about how you would want someone to talk to you. And I think that's really important. And I do agree with the we don't have a lot of conversations or opportunities where we're intergenerational, and I think if we were to have more opportunities where we could all get together, we could formulate those relationships, we can build those relationships, and then we could have these conversations. And then when we see a young person, you know, going down a path, then we would have the emotional bandwidth and the account, you know, to kind of pour in and rapport to kind of pour into them and to correct with compassion. And I also think that even if you don't know the young person or even if we don't have relationship, I do think that there's a way to say anything that you need to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we're not taught how to say what we need to say or to have difficult conversations. I think also, depending on how we were raised, we especially as women, it's like, oh, we're to be nice, we're to be sweet, we're to be gentle, we're to be quiet. And so sometimes we might equate that with being passive and not being assertive and not saying anything and not standing up for ourselves or whatever. And so I think that might be some of the reasons why people may not say anything just because of how they've been raised. But I also think that there is a way to say whatever it is that we need to say. We just have to think about how would we want someone to say that to our daughter? How would we want someone to say that to our son? How would we want someone to say it to us? Because it's really in the tone. It's in, I mean, because I don't know your intent.
Right.
But I can hear your tone.
That's
correct.
You know, and depending on what the advice is, I think also we've got to learn how to kind of surround it with something positive, not just always coming with the negative and the criticism. We've got to be able to build the person up also on the front and the back. Now in the middle, we might have to say some hard things, but on the front and in the back, we got to have something positive to say. And I think that way, because I've dealt with young people all the time. And I notice that when I come in cold with, you need to don't do this and you shouldn't do this, they don't receive it. But if I say, girl, oh my goodness, girl, that skirt is so cute, girl. And then I say, now, sweet pea, you know, I was
waiting for that sweet pea.
Because you already know. You already know I'm going to come with the sweet pea. I'm like, now, sweet pea, you know, maybe next time. You know what, sweet pea, you know what? I was thinking that when you wear this type of outfit, maybe you should wear a longer little jacket to kind of cover up. Or maybe maybe I can even talk to your mom or your grandmother or whoever. We can figure out how we can go to the store and get the proper undergarments or whatever. But we've got to find a way to bring value to the person also, so that they'll be willing to hear what it is that we have to say. And we've got to sandwich it with positivity.
Sandwich.
We got to. I mean, that's just what people are more willing to hear it when you sandwich it with something positive and not just the negative.
Right.
So
that is so powerful. We gotta be intentional about noticing when we see them doing something well.
Yes.
When they make the good grades. When we
Exactly.
see them up there singing in the choir, on the praise team. Go talk to them. Go build that relationship. Pour into them and point out what they're doing positive.
that's right.
That was so powerful, Jess. And I've actually witnessed you do that. So I'm so glad that you dropped that little nugget, because I do believe that there are women out there who have a heart for, you know, mentoring and wanting to know, but they just don't have the language. And they're just, and a lot of times it's because it wasn't
Done
modeled for them. And so they're wondering how. I have the heart, I see the need, but how do I do that? We'll just start with the relationship, you know, take her out to eat. I had so many women, gets me teared up, that poured into me when I was younger. They just said, I want to be your big sister. They would take me out to lunch. They would take me shopping. They would take me to go buy nice undergarments. I didn't realize what they were doing. But because I was going shopping to Dillard's to buy undergarments, I was so excited, not realizing that they were mentoring me and showing me how to dress and showing me how to show up in the world. And so if we could just take that cue and just show up with these young ladies, and do you think that would make a difference, Maya?
I do.
Yeah.
Because even for me, it's like I do have like older sisters, you know, who have mentored me all the way through, you know, and I found it very, you know, meaningful to me. It's like, oh, you're taking your time out just to give me a text, like a simple text could do like the biggest thing for me, like, you know. And so now that I am getting older, I try to, you know, you know, I'm realizing, you know, there's other younger ones in the church. And I'm trying to do the same thing that others have done for me.
Come on.
And I'm realizing that it's like, oh, when they come up, it's like, hi. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was me. And I'm now realizing how much of an impact those, you know, small interactions mean. Just because I had those small interactions.
That's right.
And so I think giving, you know, those kids the space just to have that someone, because you never know if they have that someone in their life, and you being that someone will make a world of difference.
And can I speak to women who are maybe Maya's age? Hopefully they are watching. I was actually very intentional in my late teens and early 20s in initiating relationships with older women. And I think that has, I know that has been invaluable to me, even until now. When it came to career, my first job out of graduate school was with a woman that I built a relationship with from my teenage years, who said, always send me your resume. Whenever you have an update to your resume, send it to me. I didn't know what she was doing with it. She was putting it on the desks of people at the government agency where she worked. And got me that first job out of graduate school. You know, that never would have happened if we didn't have that relationship. And then women whose marriages I admired, I reached out and like, can I come over to your house for Sabbath dinner? Be like, absolutely. You know, women whose clothing I admired, I'd be like, I love your outfit. Where do you shop? They're like, you want to come with me? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I do. And these are women who I continue to have relationships with now, and they are in their 50s and 60s and continue to mentor me as a mom, as a wife. So I think that's worth doing. If you're a young person watching, it's okay for you to initiate that relationship with older women. It makes a world of difference.
It does.
It absolutely does.
This is so good.
I'm so glad, because one thing Jessica said is that we need to create more safe spaces, intergenerational.
Yes.
And you brought it up too, Taina, that's one of the things that's missing.
Yeah.
And it's so true. You know, back in the day,
Yeah.
it was just like this whole community, like a tribe, like gathering around.
Yes.
And you had the great grandmother and the grandmother and the mom and there was just this well of wisdom, and now there is that separation. And so I'm just thankful for Girls Night In that we get to have this conversation and we get to hear from a 22-year-old. We get to hear from moms who have been seasoned for a while, and we get to come together and listen to each other and have these conversations. And I want to facilitate this more for even younger women, because I know that our young girls, you know, even my daughter, she's 11. She wants to know. She looks up to you so much.
I love her.
And all of you ladies, but I just do believe that we need to create more safe spaces and be more intentional about that, because I feel like it would make a difference. And we talked about it, that a lot of things are caught, not taught. And so as we're sitting up here talking, they can just catch something that will make a difference and help them know. So.
That's good. Girl, you about to make me do a lap. Wait a minute.
Listen.
Wait a minute. I'm trying to hold my mule. My God.
Safe space,
This
man.
is good. This is good.
So I wanted to just, as we get ready to close, just talk about some of the traps as we go back to confrontation, whether it's, you know, talking with a younger lady, younger woman, younger girl, or just dealing with our sisterhood. What are some traps that are like a setup for this is probably not going to end well? So I'll just share one of mine.
Okay.
One of mine that I thought of, and it's not even I thought of, it's something that I have done. And so I've learned that I need to stop repeating it.
Okay.
Whether it's internally or whether it's with a friend or with my spouse or whomever my safe space is.
Yeah.
The more sometimes you repeat it and repeat the offense and keep reliving it and keep rehashing it, that thing will just, you know, the enemy tries to get that foothold and then you're back where you started. And so one of the things that I try to watch out from is just when I see myself going back into that story or trying to relive or rehash, sometimes even when you see the person, it'll
come back,
kind of trigger, and it's like, okay, let me redirect my thoughts. Because we do not sometimes have control over what pops up, but we have control on where we park our minds. And we can change that channel and say, you know what? I choose to forgive. I choose to let that go. And I'm going to walk into a new season right now. I'm not going to rehash that, because one of you said, would I want them to do that to me? You know what I mean? I don't want that person every time they see me to just keep, you know, reliving that thing. I would want them to let that go. And so that's a part of mine. That's one of those little things that I try to just remember. Do any of them pop up for you, something that can kind of be a trigger or a trip up for when you're trying to live in a space with healthy sisterhood, healthy confrontation?
I think for me, I learned this in premarital counseling, but now I realize it needs to be applied to all relationships in general, is that if you are approaching someone about something that maybe you feel slighted or you were hurt by or whatever, the natural thing is to say, you did this to me. You made me feel. But what is most helpful is to lead with I statements. When this happened, I was hurt. I felt this. I interpreted what you said as this. Is that what you meant? And I find that is a vulnerable position because it's admitting I was hurt, that you have the power to hurt me. You have the power to make me feel bad. But I find that if you lead with that vulnerability, the other person is more likely to respond with vulnerability as well and apologize. That's not what I meant, things of that nature. But that is a very easy trap to fall into, because it's just the natural thing to do is to accuse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a big one.
That's
That's
huge.
a big one.
Yeah.
I had to learn that in marriage too.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
applies across the board. Lead
Yeah.
with the feelings, not the blame.
That's
My
right.
God.
So good. People can't argue with your feelings.
That's
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How I feel is
It's
how I feel.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
good.
That's good. That's good.
Along the same line, you are responsible for your own emotion, but so from the receiving end. So if you feel like you're always, and this isn't just some situations, so I'll speak about myself. If I'm finding that I'm always being offended by multiple people, I have to understand what my boundary is. And we didn't talk much about boundaries, but that emotional boundary that says, okay, I have a soft heart. Certain personalities don't work well with me, and I have to have a boundary.
Amen.
Otherwise,
Amen.
I walk around being offended by everybody. And then now I'm walking around hurt.
Yeah.
But I'm responsible for my own emotions.
Yeah.
And so learn your emotional boundary.
Yeah.
Apply it when you need it.
Yeah.
Boundaries only work when they have consequences. So if somebody crosses that boundary, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
Make sure they know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they, cross it, then there's a consequence. So
Yeah. That's
that would
good.
be my
You
trick a little bit.
You talking about boundaries. I was just thinking, it's like this one thing that I've always been taught is like, you can do things to me, but at some point you have no more access to me.
Right.
Come on.
You can do offense after offense, but after a certain, it's like, okay, I'm taking a step back. I will love you from a distance because
Right.
God told me to love everybody.
Right.
But that light
Yeah.
is gone.
Right.
And I'm going to take my piece
Right.
and I'm going to go over there.
Right.
Yeah.
We can talk, we can interact,
Mhm.
but that connection is no longer there. You
Right.
no longer have that.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I've seen people notice when that attachment is gone.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
And I've been put into positions where I've actually told the person, it's like, hey, I'm letting you know this now. You do this again, I'm giving you one chance.
Right.
But if it happens again, I have to take a step back. And you no longer have the access of this tight bond or friendship because I need to have my peace.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that has a lot to do with just putting your boundaries up.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of the time we can just be like, oh, it's okay. Especially for someone who's non-confrontational. I am that person. But at a certain point, you do need to know, you know what? God gave me the will and the freedom to
That's
say,
right.
hey,
Yeah.
enough
Good
is
step back.
enough. And I've been able to do that. And
Good for you, Maya.
hopefully in the future, it still works out. But again, it just takes, taking a stand for who you are and what you believe in. Because I don't think God ever intended for us to just be like, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive. At a certain point, he's like, okay, I still want you to love that person, but if you need to take that time to step back, do that.
Yeah. He doesn't want us to be a doormat.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because forgiveness does not mean that they still have access to you.
That's right.
You can forgive them and then still revoke access
Yes.
as needed.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think another trigger
That's good.
or trip up, I think someone mentioned this earlier, when we relive a situation or when we tell a situation to a friend or a family member, and then we've forgiven the person.
That's right.
and they get mad, and then they're like, I ain't talking to them.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, wait.
Now,
Maybe
I
created another issue.
Correct. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
We were talking
So
about that
true.
earlier.
Yeah.
That my sister and I, we have that rule.
Yep.
If you think that you intend to forgive that person and let them, have access back into your life, do not tell me about it. So we hold each other accountable in that way. You know what I mean? When I was dating, if I thought I might take that boyfriend back, I better not tell her that there was an issue because she's not taking him back.
No,
she's not accepting that. So
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so good. Oh my goodness. That's definitely something to watch out for. And we got those friends and we be like, wait, calm down. I'm good.
I'm good now.
Right.
I'm good now. That was last
They're
week.
like, no, I'm not good.
Right. That was yesterday, girl.
Right.
I'm good today.
One other one I wanted to bring up is just always feeling the need to respond. Because especially now in this age of social media, you know, sometimes you'll see things and you're just like, wait, hold up.
Right.
Did they just? Is that about who? What? Me?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Is this really going to be helpful?
Correct.
And so sometimes the Holy Spirit will prick us.
Yes.
And we have to bring back those little
Backspace.
fingers. Yeah, backspace. There we go. Backspace. Hallelujah. Edit, you know.
Exactly.
And, you know, dial that back because I do believe that sometimes God says, this is my battle.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I got this. I'm going
Yeah.
to take care of this person. I will
Yep.
convict them.
Yep.
Vengeance is mine. This battle's not for you. I got this. And
Right.
so we have to know to kind of fall back and say everything doesn't require a response.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't even require an explanation. You
Yeah.
don't have to know
Yeah.
why I have drawn back my access. You don't have to know all of that. And we don't have to feel pressured into explaining ourselves to
That's
people
true.
Right.
and why we've drawn that
Those are
boundary.
complete
But
sentences.
this has been so helpful, so healing.
Yeah.
I just believe that God wants his daughters to be able to coexist
Yeah.
and be able to know that it's okay to
Yeah.
have hard conversations,
Yeah.
to draw those boundaries where needed, to be able to celebrate with each other. I love that I have girlfriends that will initially like go here with me. And y'all are up here, you know, some of y'all are up here, you know, because I already know. You're like, who, what, where, what? But I know y'all got my back. But then at the same time, what I love about it is then we'll come down and say, all right, well, let's pray about
Yep.
it.
Right.
And let's see what we need to do. And so I think the two can coexist.
Yeah.
Like we can be
Right.
ready
So
to
too.
ride and we can be ready to fall on our faces together.
right.
Yes,
Cry it
okay.
out,
Yes.
pray it out, talk
Yes.
it out,
Listen.
and say, I got your back no matter what you
That's
decide.
right.
I'm praying for you.
That's right.
It's going to be okay.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And so we
it.
can have safe spaces as women. We can have those hard conversations and we can come out on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. God is good.
Yes, he is.
Thank you all for helping us break this thing down. So we're so thankful that you joined us for this episode of Girls Night In. And I'm encouraging you to get back in those multi-generational spaces.
Yes.
Create a movie night. Have a night where you come together with the ladies and just pour into each other. It's so important that we keep this community going because we need each other as women and we need that safe space. We can't wait to see you for the next episode of Girls Night In. Bye.
Losing happened to you. If you keep letting people do you and treat you any kind of way, it's going to become a culture. Winners win and losers lose.
The Vision and Dreamers Conference has been a true blessing.
My breakout sessions were amazing.
Practical ways for entrepreneurs to start their business.
All of the guest speakers, I mean, it's quite amazing.
Calling all dreamers, CEOs, content creators, and entrepreneurs. We're inviting you to the second annual Vision and Dreamers Conference, November 7th through the 9th, right here in Huntsville, Alabama.
Last year we did it big, but this year we're going to do it even bigger. We're going to kick it off that Friday night with the hip hop preacher himself. Dr. Eric Thomas is going to be in the house. And then that Saturday morning at 11, I'm going to exhort you and teach you in the Word on how to crystallize and walk in the visions God gives you. And then that afternoon, we're going to hear from the leadership voice of this generation, Dr. John Maxwell. And then we're going to close out the day with the anointed one, God's woman, Miss Tabitha Brown. And when we come together that Sunday, you're going to attend a number of breakout sessions that are going to build, instruct, and encourage you in how to make those visions a reality. And then we're going to conclude with our second annual Vision and Dreamers Brunch.
Listen, you do not want to miss this conference. Visit breathoflife.tv and grab your tickets today. It's going to be epic. It's going to be amazing. And you don't want to miss this inspiring event that's coming to Huntsville in November.
Listen, I believe it's going to be the biggest event to hit the city of Huntsville in a long time. So if you're in Huntsville, you need to come. If you're outside of Huntsville, you still need to come. And if you want to join online, there's a way for you to register and join from a distance as well. I believe that we are in the age of visions and dreams. Joel 2:28 lets us know that there's more visionary power available now than at any other time in history. So we look forward to seeing you at the 2025 Vision and Dreamers Conference.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Weekend Exhale with BOL. Listen, we could not do any of this without your amazing support. Please visit our website at breathoflife.tv to see the many ways you can support programming just like this. And while you're at it, we're encouraging you, any episodes you may have missed or any other content you want to see on Breath of Life, click here.